So, why did we create MBody? It was essentially born out of my struggles with hormonal sort of fluctuations. And I was entering into the perimenopause, didn't really understand it, asked my doctor for help, didn't really get any help from my GP. And I was kind of left to navigate this whole thing on my own. And there were a whole bunch of kind of symptoms and experiences that I was going through. And I just thought, well, I'm sure we can find some science and evidence-based programs that can help not only me, but everybody else going through this. So that's what we did. So my team and myself, we started with the hypothesis that how can we create something that is a companion for women and help them with their hormonal health. And essentially, we focused on all these different areas, which is the actual hormonal journey that you're going on, what symptoms you are experiencing. It might not be even severe symptoms, but there will be maybe kind of like mild symptoms, and enabling people to find sort of a way to thrive through this changing period and finding solutions that are empowering for women. And we teamed up with Wellhub to bring MBody to the workplace through their hub. And it's been really amazing to see so many women on work MBody through their work environment and helping to sustain and maintain their thriving life. So really, let's go back a bit because, the question is like, why is there so much emphasis on hormones? And really, it's important to understand that hormones are the drivers of everything in your body. They drive every chemical reaction. They are the messengers that orchestrate everything. And somebody once explained to me, it was a doctor actually, that the thyroid is like the conductor of the orchestra and it controls your metabolism, your temperature, everything. But the other key players are estrogen, which regulates your reproductive health, your bone density, progesterone, which supports sleep, calms the nervous system as well, really important. Testosterone, which drives energy, libido, muscle strength, and cortisol, which manages our stress response and the inflammation in our body. So understanding how these key players work and how to optimize them through your lifestyle is really, I believe, the key to longevity and thriving. So when your hormones are balanced, you feel focused, energized, and you feel like at your best. When they are not and they're disrupted, every aspect of your life can feel sort of unbalanced, and potentially you won't feel like yourself and you won't be able to achieve anything that you want to, or even just live your life in the way that you want to, and especially at work. So let's think about the hormonal journey. So first of all, in your 20s, we've got the stability, this and the foundation of your hormones. And this is where you have peak fertility. Sorry, anybody who's over 30, but you really do peak fertility in your 20s. And things are relatively stable. So you go through puberty and you get into your 20s, things are stable. You find a lot of people, and especially women at this age, kind of tend to lose a little bit of that kind of weight that they might have been carrying. They call it the puppy fat in sort of their teens. And it is a really amazing time to thrive, but it's also a really good time to lay the foundations for healthier life as you age. And that is getting, really good sort of fitness, nutrition, and mental health habits formed in those early years. Now, in your 30s, and this is can happen postpartum or if you've never had children, gradually your fertility starts to decline. So this happens around the mid 30s. And I know many people don't want to hear this, but even in the NHS at the moment, they still call any woman over 35 who's having a baby as a geriatric pregnancy, which is absolutely crazy that you can be called a geriatric at the age of 35. But that's through the ages, and that's like the science, and that's what they call women of that age. So here's where in your 30s, lifestyle becomes much more important, and you really need to start understanding much more about how your body reacts to the lifestyle and your exercise, nutrition, and everything else you're doing. and what changes you need to make. But I don't think that there's too many women in their 30s who don't find that there's some changes. Now, in your 40s, this is the roller coaster of perimenopause. So I've spoken to so many women through dealing with MBody and all the talks that I give who say, oh, I'm not feeling anything and I'm 45. Even if you're not feeling anything, the perimenopause roller coaster is starting. So it does actually start around the early 40s, sometimes late 30s. And that's when things start to change. And you might be feeling slightly, have slight brain fog, forgetting your words sometimes. Little things start showing up. And this is the important time where you should be starting to look at what is actually happening and starting to understand a little bit more about what is going on inside your body and how your hormones are showing up for you. Now, the 50s, this is when the menopause generally happens. So the average menopause time is between sort of 51 and 56, but sometimes can be earlier. And there's some misconception around the word menopause and perimenopause. So perimenopause is the period of time leading up to the point where you have the menopause. And the menopause is actually just one day. And this is defined as when you have not had a period or a cycle for 12 months. So the day after it's 12 months since your last period, that means you are now menopausal. And in fact, you're immediately postmenopausal because now you haven't had a period for a year. So now you're actually sort of classed as postmenopausal. There's a lot of talk right at the moment about HRT and whether to go on HRT, and that is an absolutely very valid thing to investigate with your GP or your OBGYN. So it's something that a lot of women are doing right now, and the evidence is very, very clear that it can actually make a massive difference. However, it's not for everybody, and some people don't want to go onto hormonal treatment. So what we're going to do for the rest of this webinar is think about everything else that you can do around either if you are using HRT or you're not. So building the foundation in your 20s and 30s, what does this actually mean? And I think there's some like really important elements to go through here. So if you are in your 20s and 30s, or if you know anyone in your 20s and 30s, encourage them, if they don't have a kind of handle on their lifestyle, to start investigating and start thinking about how they can actually improve their lifestyle right now, because it does lay the foundations for a life well lived and longevity in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. I always say that when I'm in the gym, I'm lifting weights for my 85-year-old self. So it's never about, and it's not only, yes, I'm going to feel the effects right now and I'm going to be stronger and I'm going to be able to do things, but really it's the things we do 20 to 30 years before we actually really, really need them. So some of these things, and this is not an exhaustive list, but these are probably the most important, is sleep and stress management. So getting those quality 7 to 9 hours, and there's no magic number for sleep and nobody actually knows, and the science is not definitive in terms of what we actually need in terms of number of hours, but you will know yourself once you start understanding how you feel, what works for you. I myself normally get between 6 and 7 hours, and if I get 7 hours, it's amazing. Sometimes only 5.5, and I still manage to live my life, and that's just because I just need less sleep. So there's no magic number. Consistent movement is also really, really key. And it's not only just like doing a marathon or kind of like doing once in a while. It's about consistently moving your body in the right way. Balanced nutrition, really understanding sort of what fuels you, what makes you feel good, and also really importantly, finding the joy in food, and the joy in good food, I think is really important. And then awareness of your cycle. So how is your lifestyle impacting your cycle? What are the things that you are feeling around your cycle? And MBody, our app, you can manage all of these things within the app. So you can start tracking your cycle, you can start understanding the things you're feeling prior to your cycle, prior to getting your periods, and find more information on the movement and the nutrition and the stress and sleep management side of things. And then the perimenopause decade. So I was really alarmed when I first started investigating that there are over 67 known symptoms of perimenopause. Now, that is a lot of symptoms, and not everybody has all of them, obviously, but some of them are the most, I'd say, frequent that we hear from our community are brain fog, sleep issues. Sleep issues is huge, hot flushes, shorter or longer or heavier periods. So your periods start changing. And a lot of anxiety, moodiness, sadness, and also depression. So sadness and depression are very different. Sad, you can just be generally low, but depression is when you actually start being sort of having a clinically diagnosable condition. Loss of libido is very, very common, headaches, vaginal dryness, and so many more. So, what can we actually do about this? And what is the impact really that this has on the workplace? And I think this is such a critical issue. So, you can imagine even just 3 or 4 of those symptoms coming into work every day and having to go through a day in the office and where people don't understand, you don't have any way to manage it. And we're seeing that so one in 5 women are currently experiencing perimenopause symptoms at work. 80% of them report that it impacts their work and it doesn't make them feel like they're able to complete their tasks and effectively excel in their jobs. And 25% of women who are experiencing all of these things consider leaving their jobs. And I think it's even higher in some countries, but this gives us an opportunity because if we know this and if we can actually address it and help women to feel their best and manage those symptoms, then we are keeping them and we're going to, in the end, create so much more value in the businesses and help so many more women have a more productive and a happier life. So there's some things that every woman can do for herself, and this is really part of our platform. So it will enable you to track your cycle, to consider your sleep, to track your sleep, and understand when you aren't getting good sleep, what that potentially means, moving your body daily, and also the mindset of kind of keeping yourself safe, scheduling downtime when you need it. The other one is staying hydrated, which is key. I think there's so many people who walk around mildly dehydrated for most of their lives. So it's like understanding exactly how much water you should be drinking and what makes you feel good. And then also practicing saying no and boundary setting, which is really important. So whether that's at work or home, it's really kind of not self-care should not be seen as something that is selfish, but it really is healthcare. And there's so much that we can do ourselves to make ourselves healthier. So the 50s and beyond. So this I think is really exciting. I just wrote a piece on my Substack the other day about how this is a period of renewal. So menopause is not an ending. So you see that photo? I actually got that from AI. And what I did was I asked the AI, used Gemini, to create and to give me a photograph of a woman in her 50s. Now, had I done this probably 2 to 3 years ago, I would have got a woman with gray hair who looked probably 80. So I think what's happening now, and I think this is over the last couple of years especially, is the women in their 50s are owning their lives. They are sometimes at the peak of their working life, they're at the peak of their enjoyment, peak of fitness. So we've rewritten the rules, and I say we because I'm in that category. And I think it's a very, very exciting time to be in your 50s because the past rules of our parents' age no longer apply. And I think there's this amazing movement of renewal and rejuvenation that we get to our 50s, we own our lives. It's a very different time. And I see menopause as not an ending, but a transition to a much more exciting and new stable hormonal balance that many women actually find liberating because they don't have any periods anymore and they don't have those swings. So the important things to think about in your 50s are really your bone and heart health. So using strength training, a little bit of impact training, weight bearing exercise is really, really important for bone density, cardiovascular function, and estrogen actually it tends to stabilize, even if you're on HRT or not. It can actually come to become stable. Um, Strength is really, really important. So strength training, vitally important. As I said, it also helps you to get to be much healthier as you age. And the confidence and freedom that many women report at this time helps women with their mental clarity, their emotional stability, and their personal empowerment once they understand and intentionally manage this phase of their lives. So what does this actually mean? So my program that we promote on MBody, which is all evidence-based, is 2 to 3 times a week strength training. Flexibility work is really, really important because your muscles and your tendons get very stiff because of the lack of hormones. So that's really important. And moving every single day and not just moving for 1 hour a day, moving throughout the day is really important. Recovery time is absolutely key, not negotiable. And your cardiovascular exercise in zone 2, which is kind of a low impact, not really pushing it too much, is really important, which supports your heart health, regulates your cortisol, and boosts everything. Now, how do we do this with nutrition? So, protein is very, very key at this point. Healthy fats, fiber. So many people don't have enough fiber, and that's sort of can affect how your body kind of absorbs everything else that you're having. And then phytoestrogens, so this is slightly controversial. Some people don't think that this is important, but it's something that you can discuss with your doctor if you should have, if you're not having HRT, if you can have more phytoestrogens through flaxseed, soya, legumes, whole grains that have them in them. And then limiting sugar and alcohol, which really disrupt your sugar regulation and increase inflammation. And we all know that this happens at every single age, but much more so in the perimenopause and menopause. So the 3 pillars of hormonal health that we see that we really focus on in the perimenopause are nutrition, movement, and your mindset. So the mindset is actually something, I'm a sports and exercise psychologist, and I've written so much about mindset. And the mindset is so important because that's where everything starts. That's where your motivation starts. That's where you can, start to plan your days, how you fill your time, what you do with your time, and actually how you show up in the world. And I think all of these things are like flexible in terms of like what's important at any one time. But really, it's about all of these 3 elements that are important. So, and it's all covered in MBody and in the platform. And by the way, we have a website which has a ton of information as well, which you can just access. So, how do you cope with the symptoms? As I said, it's nutrition, it's movement, prioritizing sleep. And the other thing that is not spoken about a lot, which I've found really, really helps, and there's evidence to support this as well, is that time in nature. So, even a walk in a park, just looking at the sky, looking at the trees, breathing, and feeling grateful for being alive, for being well, for being outside can actually make a huge difference to how your body copes and how you cope every single day. And then tracking and monitoring everything about your body gives you that baseline. It helps you to understand what is actually going on and not to, focus on only just one thing. So really, MBody is about breaking the silence. And I think, so long hormonal health has been shrouded in stigma and silence. And I really am pushing the boundaries here to normalize these conversations. And I think there's been a lot more in the last few years, which has really, really helped. And whether it's, pregnancy, postpartum, and, our platform is all about women's health. We have Baby to Body, which is our motherhood program, and then we have MBody, and we've actually got an AI wellness coach as well. So I think that's how this works with businesses, is that if you've got leadership, when leaders are sharing their experience, they give permission for others to do the same, which creates the psychological safety and the kind of the social safety that people feel that they can actually talk about these things, providing education, training for all your employees, not just women. So everybody understands, because this is going to happen to every single woman. Every single woman may not go through pregnancy, but every single woman will go through the perimenopause and menopause. They may sail through it, they may not feel anything, but they will go through it. And then I think the other thing is really like the stigma removal. So integrating hormonal health into well-being policies and everyday workplace, and just bringing that conversation as standard practice. And I think hormonal transitions with understanding, education, tangible support, just as we would any other significant life transition, can really make so much difference. So how can you bring it into your organization? Like thinking about what your employees need. You can partner with MBody and Wellhub, of course, and educate, communicate. I do lots of talks at companies. I can always do that for you. And then also, I think it's important to think about what is the impact you're having. So think back to prior to having these, if you put anything into practice, what was life like before and what was life like afterwards? And very often leadership and the C-suite need some kind of ROIs, and how are we making a difference? And I think that's quite easy to track if you start measuring it. So lots of ideas, and the team at Wellhub and the team at MBody, we've got tons of ideas, and just reach out and we can always talk to you about them. So some of the things we can go through again, just in terms of in workspaces, is flexible working options, maybe good for some companies, not good for others, training your managers, having access to well-being programs like that, anything that on Wellhub and MBody, and having designated spaces that people can take breaks. Maybe potentially temperature control options, because hot flushes are a real thing. It literally feels like you're in an oven. And I think all of these things, just thinking about them and putting a little bit of thought into them, can make a massive difference. So together we partner with Wellhub, and we offer the hormone-specific fitness programs, personalized nutrition, expert education, and we do also do these workplace wellness talks and events. And we've got a supportive community on Instagram, and with lots of different ideas and support. And then Wellhub, as we know, access to thousands of gym studios and wellness apps, therapy, mental health support, sleep, nutrition programs, and also I know that there are flexible options for all employees. So what we're doing is, this is such an important thing. We are serving the 865 million women around the world who are experiencing the onset of perimenopause and navigating their symptoms with the right support. And we're also helping the millions of women to navigate their 30s and their 40s with informed lifestyle habits. So laying those foundations for future health and longevity. And I think we have some time for questions, so I will stop sharing my screen. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Melinda. Would you like me to read out some of the questions that have been asked?
That'd be great.
Meanwhile, if anybody else has questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A chat, and Melinda is here to answer them. So one of the questions is about a certain medication, and they want to know if they should continue taking it and if it's healthy for them. I'm just going to read it now. I currently take desogestrel to stop periods due to fibroids. Is it safe to continue?
I'm afraid I'm not able to give any medical advice, so I think it's best to read up about it and go and speak to their doctor.
And there was another question regarding what doctor is best to go to for hormonal issues. Would that be an endocrinologist?
So if there's issues around the thyroid, then an endocrinologist, yes, absolutely. But if it's female hormones, so if they feel like they're in the perimenopause or the menopause or having sort of difficulty with their periods or any of the female health side of things, then you should go to see a female health specialist. So there are menopause specialists, and there are some clinics that focus on only women's health. So I would look at those as well. So I know that the NHS has some of them, but then also there are some private ones as well. So there's a ton, there's quite a few in Harley Street that I know of, and around the country. There are quite a few women's health platforms. Sorry, clinics that focus on only women's health.
Great, thank you so much. Another question that we had is, what is the impact of low estrogen post-menopause?
Well, there's a lot of evidence to that points to low estrogen being a precursor for the risk of getting higher Alzheimer's and dementia. So risk. So there's an interesting sort of study, quite a few studies done by Professor Lisa Mosconi in the US, which looks at the onset of Alzheimer's and dementia, and where most people who get, I think it's 3 out of 4 people who get Alzheimer's and dementia are women. And she did an amazing study where she looked at the brains of women pre-menopause and post-menopause when the estrogen was low. And there was a lot of sort of necrosis, which is like the degradation of cells post-menopause. So the hypothesis was that we should have more estrogen, which will maintain our cognitive function. And actually, this has been proven. So that is one of the reasons that the NHS are giving out much more HRT and hormone replacement therapy, which is HRT, and that includes estrogen replacement. So it has been shown to help to prevent the onset of dementia and Alzheimer's. But that is a very personal choice, and there are risks, obviously, with as with any medication. So the best thing is to talk to your doctor and go through, if you're a candidate, what the risks are, which they are, but they're very low, and then what the sort of the upside would be as well.
Great, thank you so much. Another question is, what is the minimum level of vitamin D required post-menopause?
And that just depends on everyone. Everyone's different. So to understand, I think you should be taking in, I can't remember the exact number, but there isn't a recommended daily allowance for people at every single different age. But the best thing is to actually look at to get a bloods done, so you can get blood tests done to see what your levels are, because overcompensating when you actually are getting enough vitamin D is also not a good thing. So it's better to know, are you at risk? Do you need it? And then to get it instead of just blanket taking it for everyone. So I think that's something that is really important that we try and kind of talk about a lot, is actually getting a standardized test. You can get it from a bunch of different companies in the UK, Thriver, I think Randox, there's loads of them online. I think even some kind of clinics do it as well, to get a baseline of where you are with all of your supplementation before you start overcompensating.
Great, thank you. We have so many more questions, which is great. Another one that we have is, how can brain fog be treated?
So brain fog is sometimes due to dehydration, crazily enough. And so I think once you start managing your nutritional components, you're exercising, you're getting outside, you're breathing, you're managing your stress, that definitely starts helping. So personally, I went through this, and it was during COVID that I was finding myself in the middle of a meeting, losing the words and not being able to remember stuff, and just thinking like, I'm in a fog, what is going on? So when we started researching it to create MBody, I realized that actually I could control a lot of that. So I don't know if you've seen what I'm drinking here. It's water with electrolytes in. So I
Mhm.
have that every single day, and that makes a huge, huge difference because I know that I'm getting the salts and sugars that I need and also drinking enough water. So that's number one. So your brain is made up of 70% water. So you definitely need to like concentrate on the hydration, getting enough sleep will definitely make a difference. Getting exercise because that helps your body to regulate, breathing, and also meditation and kind of relaxation and not letting yourself get too into your kind of stress because that also makes brain fog worse. So all of the things that we've spoken about already, and it's not just one thing, it's actually just that whole kind of looking at all of those different areas will definitely make a difference. And I know it has made a difference for me, and it has made a difference for a lot of our community. So there is evidence to support that, but also anecdotal evidence from our community as well.
Thank you, Melinda. That sounds really as like holistic well-being really is the answer for all of this. I'm going to continue reading the questions. Is intermittent fasting good for women, especially in perimenopausal phase?
I was waiting for that question. So this is very controversial. And up until a few years ago, I think it was encouraged that women do intermittent fasting. However, the latest research, and I follow a woman called Dr. Stacey Sims, who's done a huge amount of research into intermittent fasting and fasting for women, especially in the perimenopause and menopause. And she actually says it's not a good thing. So now I am not a doctor and I haven't done the research and I haven't conducted any research myself. However, I can tell you what I did. And I used to do a lot of intermittent fasting. And I was finding as I was getting further and further into the perimenopause that it exacerbated my brain fog. It exacerbated my blood sugar spikes. It exacerbated the fact that I wasn't sleeping well. So I stopped the intermittent fasting and started having just more protein at every meal and spacing out my meals. And it made a huge difference to me. And Stacey Sims, if you follow her on Instagram, and she's actually written a couple of books as well, she doesn't think that it's a good thing. But I think do research. I personally don't do it anymore. I do sometimes restrict the number of calories that I have in a day just to kind of reset my metabolism, and that definitely helps me. So I go down to about 900 calories where I normally have about 1600. I do that occasionally. And look, I used to do fasting for like 3 or 4 days at a time, pre the perimenopause, and I used to love it and I felt amazing, but it's not for everyone. So I would just do a little bit of research yourself and also to see how you feel on it as well. So if you can see that it's not helping you, it's a stressor. If you think about like not eating and fasting is a stressor, and the more stress you have, the more cortisol you're going to have, which is negatively impacts our life, not positively. I know that's a non-answer, but that's where I am at the moment.
That's great. Thank you. Another one. Is it advised to buy the cortisol supplements I keep seeing advertised, thinking to minimize weight gain?
Um, so there's no evidence to support that these supplements actually help. A lot of the problem with supplements is that they are not really regulated, and a lot of them are not based in science, and there's no evidence to support them. So I would err on the side of caution, and they're not going to take away your entire symptoms. They may help you feel better during the day, but it also depends on what you need. So that's what I said. Sometimes it's good to either track your symptoms and understand what you're supplementing for, and then also get a blood test to understand what your levels are before you start over supplementing. The one thing that can help and that does help hugely, and there's a huge amount of evidence for this, is magnesium. So magnesium, because we just don't hold on to magnesium as we get into our 40s and 50s, and magnesium makes a massive difference to your sleep quality, being able to fall asleep, and also your muscles and your joints and everything after exercise recovery, it's so hugely beneficial. So focus on sort of getting some magnesium. Magnesium glycinate 3-in-1, I think, is the best one to have. A lot of evidence to support that as well. That can make a big difference to most things. It's one of the cheapest supplements to take. And the other one that I'm going to mention is creatine. So creatine has been shown to cross the blood-brain barrier and actually to support your brain function, but it also helps your muscles as well. So, and it helps in recovery, it helps in sleep, it helps in everything. Also super cheap. You can get it anywhere. It's something that you can just have 5 milligrams. I have a teaspoon in my smoothie every single morning. It's made a massive difference to me, and there is a lot of evidence to support that as well. So those are the two I would say. I can't comment on all the other supplements, but the jury's out whether they actually work or not.
Thank you. That is really, really useful information. Next one is, what would be, in your opinion, the best way to measure the hormonal markers for estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone? Would that be via blood work? All the women in Perry have bad blood due to fluctuations. Are there any other ways to know this via testing?
So interestingly, when you go to your doctor to ask if you and to get some HRT or something, what they'll do is they'll take you through a symptom checker. So essentially, this is called the Green Climateric Scale. It is an evidence-based sort of quiz, and the quiz is will ask you questions on how many times in the last month you've had certain symptoms. And based on your answers, there's an algorithm that will then determine whether you are in the perimenopause pause or not. Now, what we've done on the MBody app is we've built that in to our symptom checker. So once you start checking your symptoms every single day, you will actually get that sort of understanding of how many times a day / week you've had these symptoms. So if you do that once a day, you check in and you log your symptoms, then you can start to understand, because you can see over your cycle and over a monthly period how many times you've had those symptoms. And that will give you a very clear understanding of whether you're in the perimenopause or not. Then what you do is you go and see your doctor and try and get HRT, and you say, look, here's where I've had all of these symptoms. And they will then be able to determine whether you are a candidate based on your history and your medical history and where you are and your age and everything else, to see if that's something that you can do. You're absolutely correct. Taking a blood test at one particular day will only give you that result for that day. So the best thing to do is to look at your symptoms over a period of time. One day, maybe we'll have some kind of test where we can test our saliva or our urine or something to see where those things are. But at the moment, the most accurate way, strangely enough, is really just by tracking your symptoms, which you can do on the app, or you can even just have a notebook where you write them down. But that part of the app is actually free, so you can just use that as well.
For everyone who is on Wellhub or wants to download Wellhub, you can access MBody anytime by downloading it through Wellhub. It is on the starter plan and above. So as Melinda said, you can literally start tracking your symptoms and understanding what's happening with your body via the app. We have another question. With regards to sleep, what is the optimum time to go to bed for women to feel rested and recovered?
So this is very personal, but some of the evidence says that you should go to sleep before midnight, so around between 10 and 11. For example, my daughter, who's in her late 20s, she likes to go to sleep at about 9, and during the week, not on the weekends, obviously. But for me, I've never been able to sleep at 9, and I can only sleep about 10:15. So it's also important to think about this. So when you want to go to sleep and say you're planning to go to sleep, say at 10 or between 10 and 11, wind down should start at least an hour and a half before that, because in the busy lives that we have, we bring to bed all of our stuff that's going on in our head. And in fact, this morning I was reading a paper on the quality of sleep between people who do two different things. So the one thing is write a gratefulness, have a gratefulness practice to think about all the things you're grateful for in the day. And the other um, study was done on people who wrote down the things that they're worried about. Now, alarmingly, I thought the people who would have better sleep would be the people who wrote down the gratefulness stuff, but it was actually the other way around. So what it is, it enables you to do a brain dump on a piece of paper. So it's so easy to do. Like all the things you're thinking about and you're worried about, and just put them on the piece of paper, close that paper, take it away from your bed, and then just go to sleep. And that is a way for you to kind of compartmentalize that, not think about it when you're trying to go to sleep. And the sleep quality of all the participants in the study was so much better for the people who wrote down their worries. Now, I was so shocked when I read this, but I've been doing this now for a few weeks because I was reading about it and then I read the study and I was like, okay, well now I'm convinced. So why don't you just try that? Just remember the wind down period is really important. Try not to have a screen in front of you. Try and read a book, listen to a podcast, just try and meditate, maybe do some stretching, some yoga stretching, chamomile tea if you need something to wind down as well, and kind of gently ease yourself into sleep, and then you'll be able to fall asleep quicker, easier, and you'll go straight into a better quality sleep with REM sleep and deep sleep and all those different sort of phases of sleep that are really important and restorative for us. Very long answer, sorry.
They're all great answers. We just have two more questions. The second last one is, how can I improve achy muscles? I'm always stiff in the morning.
So magnesium will help achy muscles, and then exercising every single day. So little bits of movement throughout the day is really helpful, and moving quite soon after you wake up. So just getting those muscles and joints moving as fast as possible. In other words, like don't linger, as you wake up. So the things that I do that work for me is I wake up, have a glass of water, I walk outside, even when it's cold, and I just breathe in to get the light into my eyes, which helps your circadian rhythm. And the creatine will also help you. So the creatine will definitely help your muscles and your joints in the morning. I've noticed a massive, massive change since I've been having creatine every single day. I used to have it intermittently, and then when I read so much evidence in the last 6 months, there's been a huge amount of evidence for creatine for perimenopause, and now I have it without fail every single day, and it's just night and day the difference. So magnesium as well will also help because it helps your muscles and joints to recover from exercise.
Amazing. Another question that we have is, I am 50 and perimenopause. My PMDD is getting worse. Do you have any recommendations as to what I can do to help relieve the symptoms naturally?
So yeah, that is actually a sign of perimenopause, is having, more severe symptoms. I think all of the things we spoke about before, so managing your nutrition, making sure you're getting enough exercise will definitely help. And even exercising on those days where you don't feel like exercising, just even getting outside for a walk, meditating, breathing, some breathing and awareness exercises. So just become aware of your breath. Focus on your body for a few minutes. You don't have to be sitting for 20, 30 minutes on, like in a lotus position to do that. You can do that and access it every day. And then I would actually go and see a doctor because potentially there are some things that you could do with progesterone to help that, or estrogen, depending on what those symptoms are. So I would actually go and see a doctor and get an opinion on that, because I know that lots of people in our community have had that issue, and HRT tends to kind of smooth over the edges of those things. A lot of people are given the coil, the Mirena coil, which actually helps some people. It may not be for everyone, but these are things that you can look into with your doctor.
Great. Thank you so much for answering all of those questions. If there are any more, you can type them in right now. We'll give it another minute or two before we end the webinar. I would also like to say that we've seen the message about the slides. We will be sending them to you again, so you have them, and you'll also have access to the webinar after it's over. If there are any more questions, you can type them in now.
And if anybody wants to follow me on Instagram, so I give loads of guidance and advice on all things to do with sort of work, productivity, using AI, fitness, nutrition, all of that. I'm melinda.nikki and MBody official on Instagram. And then if there's anybody who wants to follow Baby to Body as well, so follow me, and I can also direct you to MBody and to Baby to Body. And I also have a Substack, which is free, and I write about all things productivity, lifestyle, everything. So there's lots of resources out there, and I would love for you to follow me and kind of ask me any questions in my DMs as well. So happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Melinda. I think everyone has had a really great time at this webinar and learned so much today. Download MBody on Wellhub and explore the rest of the resources to get a more holistic way of taking care of yourself. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much, Melinda, for hosting this today.
You're very welcome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Really appreciate your support. This is a woman-owned company. We are trying our hardest to help everybody. So thank you so much for the support.